Business Intelligence Trend for 2017, presented by Razvan, our Senior BI Consultant. In a moment, we'll show you the top BI trends that you'll be looking for 2017. Please stay tuned and make sure if your audio is connected. If you have any questions, feel free to type into the question box right next to on the right-hand side corner, and your question will be answered at the end of the webinar. Thank you very much. Razvan, over to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good afternoon to everyone on the call. I'm extremely honored to give you a presentation today called Top Business Intelligence Trends that we expect to see throughout this year, 2017. My name is Razvan Cantoreanu. I am a business intelligence consultant, a ClickView certified developer and designer, with over 6 years of experience in delivering full-cycle ClickView and ClickSense solutions across Europe and Australia. To get things started, I will talk about the first trend, which is modern BI becomes the new normal. Let me explain in terms of what we mean by modern BI, and compare and contrast that with traditional BI, which is, I think, familiar to most people. You know, traditional BI has always been about that top-down kind of engineering and really reporting focus, whilst modern BI is really truly about self-service and empowering the end user. And the biggest, I think, defining moment here of putting modern BI in forefront is last year, sorry, why is this? Sorry, just a second. Sorry for this.
As usual, technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll come back soon.
Sorry for this. I just have to get rid of this. Yeah, sorry, I just need to take care of this thing. I don't know why it is showing up. Okay, so yeah, sorry for that. Let's continue. As I was saying, yeah, the biggest moment here, and the biggest defining moment of putting modern BI in forefront is actually last year with Gartner sort of repositioning of the platforms, which somehow gave a very different perspective of the quadrant. It's really no surprise, or it shouldn't been a surprise, because it's been a transition happening over the past 10 years now, where Gartner and others saw a slowdown in buying a traditional reporting tool. They still have their place in the market, but with the explosion of data, the explosion of complexity in data, there is a new approach needed, and that approach is really modern BI, which pushes the analytics to the end user, to the analyst. What we are seeing is that data has become such a critical part of success in organizations, but the challenge has always been that the users who want to be able to work with that data have actually not been able to. And as a result of that, traditional BI has never really fulfilled the premise that it was designed for, and the user starting wending off and they export it to Excel, or they did anything they could do to work with that data. That always created challenges for IT, and now organizations are not investing anymore in traditional BI, but rather on that modern BI infrastructure where you can provide empowerment for the users while still having governance in place. The key thing is, how do you transition from the old mindset, delivering a report factory, to a mindset of self-service empowerment? That will be probably the biggest challenge. And there are also two other tipping points here that are starting to be seen in the modern BI becoming the new norm. And one is, for years and years, the deployment of self-service tools has always been a separate thing to other activities that the organizations were doing. It was okay to use it in this department, for instance, or this project to use it. It was somehow a coexisting strategy that companies started moving forward with. What we've seen in the last couple of years is that the departments are mature enough, and the way the organizations want to work with that data has drastically changed. So it's not an isolated project-by-project decision anymore on using modern BI. Talking with customers and sort of just sort of seeing the sentiment out there on the market, this is probably the year when modern BI becomes the new normal for everyone. Organizations that weren't aware of this transition and were still trying to use traditional BI are definitely going to start modernizing, are going to start executing on modernization approaches, which not only means necessarily new technologies, but the thoughts around people and processes as well. So really, the whole program will start talking about this modernization. We expect to become the topic for investment this year and obviously accelerate and continue to evolve. I don't think we'll get to the point where modern BI completely replaces traditional BI, but really does become an integral part of an organization BI and analytics program. So now I'll move to our next trend, which is collaborative analytics goes from the fringe to the core. To connect this with our previous trend, we are seeing that collaboration and the users actually engaging with data is a core part of how self-service analytics works. So if we think about the traditional approach, which has really been a report factory, IT or BI center of excellence developing reports that get pushed to the user, we're seeing that in this self-service world and modern BI framework, the business users who have questions about data want to be able to engage other experts and ask the questions in a two-way fashion. So rather than sharing a mechanism that was putting a chart in a PowerPoint deck, it's now something that everybody's going to be able to do as a core part of the analytical flow. And so collaboration is that next step where after the users are able to ask their own questions, they're going to be able to start engaging with other users, ask questions to experts on that data. And that's a core function of these modern BI platforms. But there's another part of it, which is when we think about collaboration, it's not just about being able to have a discussion about data. You want to be able for those discussions to happen both in the BI tool as well where the collaboration exists in the organization. But you also want to be able to collaborate on alerts and subscriptions and be able to engage on that data when there is, you know, a key event that occurs. And so data and analytics is just going to become part of this, of the workflow of people all over the organization. So when we think about it in that context of modern BI being the new normal, it brings along collaboration as something that everybody is going to be able to do as a core part of that analytical platform. The last thing I want to add on this topic is that when you think about collaborative, you think about social, and I think the line between how we interact personally with social platforms is going to start to actually bleed in the way we do our work. Things we are going to start seeing from a technology perspective about being able to follow, being able to like on platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, and so on, is going to feel pretty natural to transition that to a work environment. So I really think this year they are somehow starting to melt together, the social part of it. Let's now move to our next trend, the third one, which is all data becomes equal. The notion of all data becomes equal really belongs to the modern BI platforms. In the past, when there was a traditional BI platform in place and things were centered around this notion of report factories, the data was sourced based on a single source, a data warehouse that organizations had usually. But this has failed, and people started bringing things into Excel, and they were using other tools they had on their desktop to just start bringing different data sources. Because the data warehouse was actually created for certain things, it didn't have all the data that the organization needed. So the new real shift that we're seeing in organization is that it's okay to have lots and lots of data sources in the organizations. And it's okay that people have Excel spreadsheets, data marts, and data warehouses, Hadoop systems, various providers. The idea is that all of that data is equally valuable as a part of this analysis process that the organizations are going through. So the world has transitioned from a single source of data to a variety of different types and different sources of data. This is now all about answering questions coming from the business, and before it has mattered where your data lives. If it happened for your data to be in a Hadoop system, you most likely need a different tool to analyze that than if it was in a traditional relational database. This is going to become less and less the case because we are at the point where it really doesn't matter anymore. The whole point is getting actually to the point where you're focusing on answering that question. So it doesn't really matter what architectural decisions you made to store the data. It's all about getting it out and integrating it and putting it to work to provide that analytic insight. Moving on to our next trend, the fourth one, IT becomes the data hero. The essence of that, of what's behind this, it's basically a transition that the organizations as a whole are going through, and also a transition in the opportunity for the IT department to really move in an enabling role for the business users in the organization that they work with. For years and years, it was always the situation like IT will create this for me, which was kind of a reporting factory model, as I said before. I'll take this data pool for you and you can take it into Excel, kind of the way they were dealing with this in the past. And that always led to a little bit of frustration on the business user side, because they always felt like, why do I have to go ask other people for these activities? Whilst now in the new world, where the IT gets out from the activities that were a little less interesting in creating all those reports, and it becomes a true enabler in providing the data content and enabling the rest of the organization to have access on the information that they need. Now, there are still tons and tons of really important activities that the IT organization is the new data hero needs to provide, which is to make sure that there is a proper security around data, to make sure there's governance around data, make sure things are being compliant with any regulatory constraints that the organization is working within. Of course, the initial reaction from IT when they started to hear and think about self-service and traditional BI kind of being on the downtrend, the initial thought was, what is my role going to be from now on? But actually, the IT is really moving from the role of a producer, which was before, to an enabler in the modern BI world. They are enabling now a process that's being driven by the business users, and they are now enabling a much higher process than it was with traditional BI. The big thing here is that the role of IT is definitely evolving. It's in fact even more important in this new world of ensuring that the right data is in place to enable those users to be out there. And then to make that infrastructure really successful. And so when IT becomes the enabler rather than do everything, it makes things happen. Now, when we look at this environment, it does mean in some cases that IT maybe has to step back a little bit and let the users start experimenting with data. But there is still a collaborative process between IT and the business, and when it works and when you apply a more agile methodology to data and analytics, that's when you start seeing the energy accelerating. If you just apply modern BI in the old way that was done, you're not going to be the hero. It's not going to change the organization. But when business and IT are working together and there's a good balance between what I said before, governance, security, and compliance, with the enablement for the business, it truly changes organizations and it makes employees more engaged. It makes IT more successful and focused on highly valued tasks than, let's say, report creation. Moving on to the next trend, which is people start to work with data in more natural ways. This is an interesting one and somehow controversial. When people talk about more natural ways, what do we mean by that? In many cases, people think about voice or text, being able to engage with data with something like Siri and having devices respond with answers to those questions. This is definitely a new kind of engagement with data than natural language processing. We also see a different flavor of it, which is natural language generation, where there is some great innovation there, where algorithms can start writing out what the charts are actually saying and enabling you to engage in that new way. Now, is Siri going to replace how we engage with data? Probably not. But we are already started seeing some innovative ways of driving new kind of engagement and new mechanisms where technology will enable people to be more comfortable and reduce the barrier of entry of a broader set of users to engage with data. Because data can be daunting for many users. It's somehow scary, even the basic drag and drop, which many of us would consider pretty easy, can be hard for certain users to know. They don't know, for instance, they don't know where to start from. And so innovation in natural language technologies will open up data and analytics to a next wave of users, and it will complement the tools that we have today to make that engagement a little bit easier. even a more immediate path that we're starting to see people is the most natural thing that everybody on the planet is doing right now in pretty much every minute of every day. People are staring at their phones and trying to look at things there. And a very natural way to work with data is just swiping through some high-level displays of metrics or looking at some stock prices, things like that. Those are certainly types of analytics that are happening on your device. And moving in the way you interact with it and take a glance and look at your data in the analytics that have been driven behind those data values that show up there. It's all part of this whole new trend where we're really seeing people starting to look at these devices as tools in their analytic workflows. On to the next trend, and the last one, the sixth trend I have in this presentation, would be the fact that the transition to the cloud accelerates. 2017 is definitely the year where the transition to the cloud accelerates. I think this says it all. But actually, yeah, we've been talking about the cloud for many, many years, and most industries and technologies have been completely transformed by the cloud. Just look at some big companies on the market like Amazon, Salesforce, and others. What's been interesting is that analytics has been somehow lagged in terms of cloud options. Most analytic programs have actually been on premises. And part of the reason for that, people would say, is around data gravity, where people and organizations want to put their analytics closer to where the data is. You want to do that, yeah, because of performance, latency, etc. So if the majority of the data is on premises in for instance, an Oracle data warehouse, it makes sense to put your analytics on premises as well. But what we're seeing now is like more and more of the data is becoming cloud-born. It's in Salesforce, Google Analytics, Amazon Redshift, SQL Azure, and it's starting to make more sense to put the analytics right there where the data is. But organizations are also migrating their entire platforms, their infrastructure. They're getting rid of data centers. They're moving their apps, their databases, their systems all to the cloud, and it's definitely accelerating. A recent study that showed that over 50% of the customers in the BI space are either moving to the cloud this year, 2017, or they are planning their strategy this year. Now, when you think about the cloud, it's not just a software as a service, just an application that is up there and answer all of your questions. What you really want is also to leverage your data where it is without having to move it. You also need to reach back to the on-premises data sources to enable you to make that transition more seamless. Now, we are also seeing a more hybrid cloud strategy where you can have a cloud-hosted software, but data on premises in the cloud in multiple different locations. The things that were barriers before, like security concerns, have all now gone away. The platforms in the cloud are now one of the most secure. So I really think 2017 is the year where the cloud and analytics, yeah, the analytics goes to the cloud really, really fast. This brings us to the end of the presentation. So I just wanna thank everyone for joining us. Hopefully you found the topic interesting and informative. Maybe you've learned some new things and maybe, I don't know, got some things to think about. I'm just gonna pass this over to Rebecca if maybe she wants to add something or to take some questions.
Thanks, Razvan. So we do have some questions that users have raised right here. I'll collect the questions right here. So if you have any questions, please feel free to enter into the toolbox, the text box on the right side, and we'll be answered your question shortly. So question number one, which software tool do you think is following this trend?
Yeah, if you think from a specific software perspective, I think that if we look at the three main big players on the BI market, which are now Qlik, Power BI, and Tableau. Yeah, first of all of them are self-service modern BI platforms. So once Gartner has repositioned them last year, so we have the top three big players. A modern BI is a modern BI platform. Then, yeah, if we would have to take it punctually on the trends I was talking about, I would say they all have, these three ones, they all have sharing and collaboration tools and functionalities. From the perspective of all data being equal, here is a part, for instance, where Qlik with QlikView and QlikSense, and also Power BI really stand out, leaving a bit Tableau a bit behind when it comes to dealing with multiple data sources. Also, the natural language and storytelling functionalities. I think that at the moment are only present on the Qlik platforms, have been integrated with the Qlik platform, whilst Tableau and Power BI are still working on integrating this feature in the future versions. All in all, these three main players, Qlik, Power BI, and Tableau, are definitely setting the new trends on the analytics market. Each one of them having some slightly different features than the other.
Okay, thanks for that question and comment. The next question that we have is the security concern on the cloud. You mentioned that security concern is going away on the cloud. Can you explain more on that?
Yeah. So before, as I was saying, for many years, people were having a lot of security concerns from this point of view, from the cloud's perspective. Even now, if it depends on the market that you're on, the country and the legislation behind, because, for instance, there's still a big, in Central Europe and Eastern Europe, there's still a big reluctancy from this point of view of moving the analytics platforms and the servers to the cloud. For instance, in Germany and some other Eastern European countries, which are their legislation is very strict when it comes to where the data is stored, and they got to have all the procedures and everything very transparent. From this point of view, there are still the markets are dealing different with this cloud transition. But when I was saying that now it's more secure, it's just that all this analytics, I'm talking from the analytics perspective, they're now they don't have, at the beginning, when they were first launched as cloud platforms, of course they were at the beginning, they weren't mature enough, and they had their flaws, which materialized in some big issues some clients had over the time. But with these new releases of Power BI, which is absolutely excellent in the cloud, and also the QlikSense cloud, I really think, and from my experience, they are mature enough not to have these security concerns anymore that they used to be.
Okay, great. And then the next question, what preparation do organizations need to do to tackle all these trends that you mentioned?
Um, it depends on from organization to organization, of course, and it depends how you have your databases stored till now. What are you using? If you've till now you've used only, I don't know, a SQL Server platform for your database, and yeah, let's say mostly you have things on a Microsoft platform, SQL Server and SharePoint, then of course the next obvious step nowadays would probably be to buy a Power BI platform which integrates all of these Microsoft data sources really easily. If you have different data sources in your organizations spread out across Microsoft, Oracle, Hadoop, and some others, who knows, then a good approach would be to use Qlik with QlikView and QlikSense. Or if you just have a really good data warehouse where all the aggregations are being done at the data warehouse level, let's say an excellent Hadoop system or something, then you would probably just need a Tableau solutions for visualizations. But then, if organizations want to stay in this trend, they should probably, the simplest thing would be to rethink their whole analytics program, and to start investing in these modern BI platforms, which are definitely gonna evolve, and they're gonna be more and more mature year by year. And traditional BI is definitely going to be left behind in the next years. So the approach would be to migrate to a modern BI tool. My opinion would be one of these three big players are mature enough to construct a really good data analytics program in your organization.
That's right. And of course, you can contact Prima Consulting to help you choose the right tool. So, and we're running short of time. So for the rest of the questions, we'll email you privately. So if you have any other questions, please contact Rebecca at prc.com.au. And this webinar will be available after this as a recording if you would like to access it. Thank you very much all for joining us today. I hope to see you guys in the next webinar. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.